We've got a question here from Paul Smulders, who really seems to capture a general theme and of many of our questions from friends this morning. If not the ANC, what will replace the ANC if they do not survive?
Right. Around the world, the argument I reach in the book, the one I later settle, I create some alternatives. The one I settle on is this: that around the world of late, where centrist to left of center governments have been defeated, even where they've been in power for a long time, they're not being defeated by other centrists or leftists, always. They are being defeated by what their critics would describe as right-wing populists. And that's a very broad category. Some of the people in that category deserve the term, others don't. Examples from people who deserve it to those who don't would stretch from perhaps Viktor Orban in Hungary to Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil, to and then those who to Donald Trump in America, depending on where you stand on him, a complex guy, some very, very good insights, good instinctive politician, but build a wall is a right-wing populist political slogan. There's no getting away from that. The Modi administration in India, and Mr. Johnson in the UK. And the conclusion we ultimately reach is this: that the ANC will lose, not because anyone beats it in 2024, but because our politics has become such a race to the bottom. They're just not going to have 50%. No one's going to have 50%. We're going to get into a series of quite shambolic coalitions. You know, if you can't hold a coalition together in Port Elizabeth, you can't hold one together in Pretoria. And that this will be quite a shambolic era. But don't be too distressed by that. A system of government that doesn't allow politicians to implement policies effectively also protects you from the implementation of bad policies such as expropriation. Something we've long warned business on. Stop saying you wish they just implement their policies. Read some of the policies first and then be grateful that implementation doesn't happen. So there's this era of shambolicness, and out of that, much public frustration will arise. And that frustration, I argue, and now here I am out on a bit of a limb, I argue will give rise to the beginnings of what will be a new right-of-center political establishment, led in the main by what we call black conservatives in the proper sense of the word, the manner in which the term liberal and conservative is applied in America, which is very different to the other side of the Atlantic where we are. If I'm in America, I've got to be careful to make that clear, lest the audiences get the wrong idea. The sort of Thomas Sowell, Clarence Thomas, the great American justice, described once by a critic as the most conservative man in America. That kind of movement arises, and it arises because the money to get it going will be available, and it will resonate with public opinion. Because public opinion, doodgewone mense, ordinary people in our country, in the main, black and white, are fundamentally moderate, they're conservative in their views, and they want fundamentally the same thing. And while we're having a morning of heresy, I can do the pinnacle of all heresy to say that racial conflicts, tensions, divides are not the fundamental South Africa divide at all. It's a divide that's been engineered by every government that has feared what might happen when South Africa's people actually get to know each other a bit better and realize that what they want, rich, poor, black, white, the whole business, is actually fundamentally the same thing. And race and racial nationalism and racial provocation has been employed by every government that's ever governed this country and part of the world, particularly where that government feels itself slightly under political pressure. So the ultimate conclusion we reach is that South Africa will follow these patterns of the Modis, of the Orbans, of the Bolsonaros, of the Trumps, of the Johnsons, because that resonates with public opinion. And this new administration, unlike anything the country's ever seen, will lead South Africa with great success through the 2020s and into the 2030s. That's the conclusion. There's some minority opinion conclusions that go with that. We do a lot of scenario planning. It is our thing, what we do. So I think that is what it will be. I'll stake the reputation on that. And a few years down the line, you can tell me, did we get it right or not? The greatest risk to that is that if the climate of opinion in South Africa remains hostile to what by our side of the Atlantic would be termed liberal ideas, there is a risk that the relative left of the political spectrum will hijack the frustrations of people at their impoverishment, now accelerated by the lockdown, and the fear that comes with that, and that the coalition may degenerate into a hard left movement that may see South Africa slide off into a sort of Venezuelan future. Now, I did agonize over this. I mean, those paragraphs in the book where we say but I thought you must say what it will be. You can't. It is our tradition too. We don't say maybe. You had to say, but I did agonize there. This way, that way, this way, that way. Ultimately, I convinced myself. I also live in the country, so maybe there's something there, that if you bet on South Africa's people at any point over the past several decades, points of crisis, they've broadly made the right decisions. And if we retain the basic trappings of being a democracy, I think the outcome is right of center. Of course, if we lose those basic trappings, then my thesis would be particularly vulnerable to attack.